This is Eitan Weinstein.
And I'm Naor Menninger, and you're listening to Two Nice Jewish Boys.
This podcast is sponsored by The Forward. Stay up to date with unlimited access to news, culture, and opinion all through a Jewish lens. And for our listeners, for 2NJB listeners, get 6 months of The Forward for only $10. That's 67% off. An exclusive subscription offer for our listeners, forward.com/2NJB, and get 6 months for $10. Also in collaboration with Arutz Sheva, IsraelNationalNews.com. And last but not least, in collaboration with Australian Jewish News, check them out at ajn.timesofisrael.com. Happy birthday. COVID has been with us for a year now. It's official. But as we're all going to be vaccinated pretty soon, some aspects of the disease are going to remain with us for a long, long time. Because even though most people didn't end up getting infected with the virus, a huge amount of households, here in Israel at least, suffer from the devastating economic impact that 2 lockdowns and more everlasting draconic restrictions have brought upon middle and lower class citizens who are simply trying to make ends meet. When Tamara Harel Cohen decided to make Aliyah and devote her career to build a socially impactful startup, she didn't imagine the chaos that would hit us all. Her company Riseup is helping households make better economic decisions and ultimately get out of debt. But as debt in Israel is constantly rising each year, that is not an easy mission to take on. We're super excited to have Tamara Harel Cohen with us today to talk about her fascinating and innovative company, about our everyday economic decisions, and much, much more. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm actually one of the few people that did get infected by COVID.
Oh, really? Yes. We could spend an episode talking about that.
Yeah, I had it at the beginning of March. We had a office Purim party, which didn't end very well. So out of our team of, then we were 20 out of 29 people got it.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's a good
Thankfully,
thing.
everyone was fine and nothing serious. But yeah, so now we have some sort of herd immunity in the company.
Wow. Well, that's nice because I didn't shower today. But I'm assuming you can't smell. So
I actually didn't have that side effect. I had other things, but I didn't get that one. Yeah.
You didn't lose smell or taste at all. Wow.
Yeah,
okay.
Not everybody was.
So then I'm sorry.
So where do we begin from? I don't know. It's such a complex issue, right?
Why did you decide to make Aliyah and found a startup in Israel to begin with?
So I grew up in London. I grew up in West London. I went to a all girls school, a Christian, Church of England school. And from there I moved to America. I went to Harvard undergrad and started working in media. And Israel was a place where I came to visit my grandparents, where I came to have a good time on holidays, and hadn't really ever thought of it as a place where I could build a career. And after about 6 years in working in a company called Pulse, we sold the company to Vice in the US, and I sort of found myself at a crossroads. At that point, I was living in LA. And the world of social impact was something that I had sort of been exposed to through my dad, and I sort of thought was going to be the next thing that I wanted to do. Social impact being companies who, the goal of the company is to solve a social issue, and not only to make money, but to do so by making, building a sustainable business at the same time. And I came to Israel for 10 days just to visit, and was sort of I had this impact bug, and I was going around and meeting people, and sort of, in Israel, someone introduced you to one person, and then they introduce you to 5 other people, and so my week...
And then you know the whole country.
Literally everyone. And that energy was something that I hadn't been exposed to before. the level of the talent here was something that I hadn't been exposed to here before, and also all of the technology and sort of product thinking I found very exciting. And then I stayed. I went back 2 months later just to pack up my stuff, and was like, okay, if I'm going to do something that is meaningful and is going to have a social impact, then it's something that I want to do in Israel.
And
then
before you moved here, you already had the idea for the startup, or you just came here knowing you want to start a startup?
I came here knowing I wanted to start a startup, that I wanted to find partners here, and that I wanted it to do good. And it was very open other than that.
You mentioned your dad, so just for the record, who's your dad?
My dad is Ronald Cohen, who did... Sir Ronald Cohen.
Respect.
Not to me, but yeah.
You don't call him sir.
To be his dad. And he comes from the world of venture capital, and then at age 60 decided he was, well before 60, he decided he would retire. And he did like a total 180 and got involved in the world of social impact. And now he only talks about impact. So I kind of had no option, got brainwashed.
Right. So tell us, let's jump ahead a little bit and then we'll go back again to talk about how the idea came about. But tell us a little bit about Riseup and what exactly it does and how you guys do it.
So Riseup is a platform focused on regular people, middle and lower income households in Israel, and just helping them to navigate their financial world. And we do it by making it very, very simple. We help them to do it through WhatsApp because, as you guys know, everyone in Israel is on WhatsApp, and that's and so we think that instead of having to go into an app and decide that you're going to actively deal with your finances today, it should be something that comes to you by push. And that way we're able to help to keep sort of your financial situation top of mind in a way that we basically manage cash flow. So cash flow is what businesses, call cash flow is king. But when we talk about our own personal finances, we don't ever think about cash flow. We think about budgets. We think about, saving for the future, but we don't look at the specific month and how we can essentially, we say in Hebrew, how we can win the month. And the thing that we've realized is that the moment that people understand how much they're making this month, how much they've already committed to spending, and what's left, which is essentially, the money that they can make daily decisions on, they're able to make good financial decisions, and it sort of lowers the financial stress, because we know that when you're in financial stress, you make less good decisions, as we do when we're in any kind of stress.
Not just financial decisions, but decisions in general.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that's what we do. Our product is in WhatsApp, and it helps people to know at any given moment where they stand financially, and they're able to consult with us when they have to make bigger decisions. They get to a human being who by chat, and they will answer them on all of their, help them to navigate different financial decisions.
So let's say I'm a family and I subscribe to your service, and so when when I go shopping, about it automatically, or I need to report to you? How does it work exactly?
No, so we're very strong believers in the hardest part of managing your finances should be making the decisions. But today it isn't. It's actually getting to figure out where you stand. So the first thing that we did is we built the whole thing automatically. So we connect to all your bank accounts and credit cards, and we do all kinds of, cool technological things in the background in order to essentially get to that one number, which tells you how much money you have left this week or to the end of the month. And that's what you get by push in WhatsApp. And then for bigger decisions, we know that technology can't provide all of the framework and all of the support that's needed. And there we have our sort of cash flow experts who are real people who are available to you at any time through the chat.
So you get a push daily, weekly? You get a push that tells you how much you have left for that day, for that month?
You get a push a few times a week for either the week or the month. depending on your
And
cash.
people aren't wary of giving you access to their bank accounts and to all their financial information.
Yeah, I think that the first of all, there's a decision that you have to make, which is I want to know where I stand, which is sort of the first step to any process. And beyond that, there's different concerns of sort of privacy. Maybe I don't want people to sort of know, if people see how much I'm spending, then not that they're already people, right? It's an automatic a system, but there's something that feels like we have to come to terms with our behavior if we're sort of sharing it with other people. And in terms of security, we have one of the strongest tech teams here in Israel. Everyone was in 8200 and in the best place in order to build these kinds of secure systems. And we've been integrated with now recently with the bank discount, which again shows the level of security that we have. But it takes a leap of faith, obviously, to join, and trust is sort of the cornerstone of what we're trying to build. In the UK and the US, sharing your bank data in order to get services is something that we're all very regular. We're all used to doing. In Israel, it doesn't exist.
No.
There's no fintechs that are focused on on sort of the average Israeli.
Yeah.
So can you explain the word, like, how does it look like? Because I didn't understand. What do you mean by helping make decisions?
Okay, so let's say you're in, you've gone to the supermarket, and as they do here, right, they ask you if you want to pay in installments, לחלק. How do you make that decision? Depending,
See, I always say no.
Why do you always say no?
Because it's fraudulent, the whole concept of tashlumim here in Israel, the payments.
Mm-hmm. So
I mean, you're doing
It's a sham.
installments on a house.
Yes, because I can't afford to. Yeah.
So
Right.
some people, if you can afford it, then it's stupid.
But the problem is people can't afford even the tashlumim. How do you installments?
yeah.
And yet they take them. In reality, they can't afford anything. They're always in debt. So yeah.
So interestingly, Israel is one of, I think, 5 markets in the world that allows you to pay in installments more or less anywhere that you go. And most people decide whether or not they're going to pay because they've been told either always to pay or never to pay in installments.
Right.
My uncle always told me never to pay in installments, therefore I don't. And what our service allows you to do is to check at that moment if you can spend the money that you're supposed to, that it says sort of on the till at the supermarket, or if you need to spread it out over other installments. As a small example, any kind of big purchase, or we talk about the sort of pizza effect. Can we order pizza tonight, or should we, be making dinner? Is something that no financial service helps you to understand. And that's what we're trying to really solve. The second that you understand where you are in terms of your cash flow, you can make that decision. And then spending money can actually be something that is fun, because you have the money, and not, I sort of don't know where I stand. And you open your bank account at the end of the month, and it's usually not the nicest surprise of where you stand.
Pizza. Sushi. Yeah, it's a problem. But I have to say, isn't it a bit sad? Like those thoughts, decision-making processes should be taught in first grade. Like
First grade,
maybe third,
maybe 6.
maybe sixth.
I think that you nailed it in your question, because you said decision-making processes. Most of the sort of the financial education that exists in the world is like, let's learn how banks, make money and lend money, and it doesn't help you in your life to make financial decisions.
How come?
How come? Because I don't really need to understand how the bank works in order to...
No. How come? Because there's the conspiracy that states and wealthy people don't want you to be educated, so they're like... Do you buy in to that?
I don't think that there are many organizations of people that want people to be, at a very high financial literacy. So yes, I sort of buy into that. But I just think that there hasn't been, it's more because there hasn't sort of been someone that comes in order to, to try and change it.
Is it? I mean, but that's a bit the opposite, right? It's like that there isn't a desire to have people to acquire a high level of. It's not that they have a desire to keep people financially illiterate, but rather just
it's no one's agenda to make you.
There's no incentive.
No incentive.
Because then credit card companies would go bankrupt and banks.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that if you look at the sort of syllabus for financial education, it hasn't changed, in the last decades.
No, but I mean, the idea that credit is like, I mean, I don't know, the banks are keeping you down because credit exists on this fraud. I mean, credit is not a bad thing. Like, a lot of people use credit and use loans, but I'm wondering if there's it sounds like there's just a lack of incentive to do this. So what is how, other than just doing good, how are you guys, I mean, I don't know if you could share with us your business model, but how do people pay for this service?
Yes. So one of the most important things that we were trying to figure out when we founded the company is how we won't be in that nikud interesim, which I can't think of how you
conflict
say it. Conflict of interest, which doesn't happen to me a lot in Hebrew. In that conflict of interest, which exists with so many financial services, almost all financial services, as you said, credit can be a good thing. But the moment that there's a business model behind that credit that says we have to sell it to as many people as we can, then suddenly you have institutions that are pushing credit to people that don't necessarily have the ability to return it. And so when we founded the company, it was really important to us to have a business model that was between us and the customer, and that our interest for over time is to keep our customers and to help them to grow financially and help them to build more and more assets, and not to sell them financial products. So we are a subscription model. So it costs 45 shekels a month. And from there, we're going to, build all kinds of financial products that will help people to build more assets and to save for the future, rather than having to push credit, because that's sort of our model is an affiliate fee.
I don't think there are many startups here that actually created a product in Hebrew.
Yes.
Right? It's
especially for an Ola.
Yeah.
I came to Israel 5 years ago and straight to the Ulpan, so it's been a pretty interesting ride. I think I'm one of the only people I know in Tel Aviv that writes emails in Hebrew. I think that's one of the reasons that we started the company with a focus on Israel and not Israel as a pilot, because a lot of companies here use Israel as a pilot market, and then they go to the US or to other larger markets. But when you look at financial services here, there's been almost no innovation. We're very, very strong in fintech, but not in fintech that looks at the Israeli market.
Because it's so heavily regulated here.
Or because there's not really any incentive to enter the game. Because you can build systems here that they support Hebrew, as you asked the question. But when you look at the market and if you're able to capture a good enough size of a good enough percentage of the market, it can be a very significant business. And so for us, it was also very important to it is very important. We made some steps, but we're still on our way to prove that you can, that you can build things for the Israeli market, and that from here we can then take it out to other markets. But that we're sort of a sort of export of the success in Israel.
So you had no idea what was coming your way when you decided to establish this company, right? So how did it all start? And then maybe tell us a little bit about how COVID influenced.
Mm-hmm. So I started the company with 3 partners. Yuval Samet, who is the CEO, who comes from a rich background in banking. but sort of, digital and product banking, not what you think of when you say bank.
Not a bank teller.
Yeah. Iftach Bar, who is, one of the strongest technology guys in Israel, and Hanan Rubin, who is a social activist, politician, and sort of brought, the whole social side and sort of understanding the issues in Israel. And we together looked for a problem that we could solve, using sort of the lean startup model and using the experience that all of us sort of had, from different worlds. And very quickly, when you go around Israel and you ask people what's plaguing you, or, what would you like us to solve, the cost of living is something that comes up a lot. And when we started to research that and dig into that, we realized that how difficult it is when you're when you're a person alone against the system in Israel, how difficult it is to understand where you stand financially. It's really, really it's not a very user-friendly experience.
How come?
I think because there hasn't really been much competition in the in the Israeli space. When you think in the Israeli market, when you think of all the all the fintechs that have come up in Europe and in the US that sort of make the user experience so much easier. So obviously starting with Mint, but today there's millions of them. And here, we haven't had a new bank in something like 60 years.
So, but what do you mean? Like, I can go into my bank account through an app and see how much money I have, or check, what I have in various funds through their websites, right? So what's missing in the user experience? Can you describe what does exist out there?
Yeah, automatic savings, investing by a click, different kinds of tips that will help you to, to save or to change your behavior, different kinds of rounding up schemes. There really are amazing and big companies that have been built around these sort of concepts around the world. And in Israel, the bank apps aren't necessarily that much, they're as good as the bank apps in the US or the UK perhaps, but they're not, giving, they still don't look at, the consumer and sort of say, okay, what can we do in order to help them to achieve their financial goals? And so that's the problem that we set out to solve. Today we're a team of 30 people.
You just raised some funds, no? Or?
We raised a second round last November, which was pretty good timing in terms of COVID. And we, we're as everyone was, were sort of, shocked and then reeling from the shock of sort of everything that's happened this last year. For us, it's unfortunately made us very relevant. And then on the flip side, fortunately, I think the conversation about finances is something that has started to come up. It's something that people are talking about way more than they did before. And I think that that's something that we, I hope will continue also after. And so we've grown a huge amount in terms of our customer base. We've done a lot of, we've sort of helped people to make a lot of financial decisions that were very difficult in the last few months.
So
can you share some numbers with us?
Numbers?
We're greedy for numbers. Maybe can you tell us how much was invested, who invested, maybe how many users?
So we raised tens of millions of dollars.
Wow.
Aleph, Michael Eisenberg at Aleph is our lead investor. And we more than sort of doubled our user base during the months of, between April and August. And so now we've sort of been growing steadily. We opened our service for free for those months because we felt like, I'm sure like everyone did, we just want to help, but and we really did, get a huge amount of sort of inbound questions of how long do we have? How long is our runway? Especially at the beginning where people didn't know, are we going to get unemployment? What does it mean to, be furloughed? How long is this thing going to last? And so I think in a time of uncertainty, I think that we were able to, to help some people navigate some tricky decisions.
Can you share some numbers about the market here in Israel? So how many families, I don't know, what's this amount of debt? How many families can't make ends meet what do you work with?
So 1 in 2 Israelis in 2018, I think the number is from, it was in overdraft in the last year, which means in minus, which means that they're that they're essentially paying a loan that they just signed when they opened their bank account. And
1 in 2. And
1 in 2.
50%.
And how's that comparing to America, the UK?
So in other markets, people don't, for example, in the US, people use credit and revolving credit in a way that is less common here. Now they're starting to also have revolving credit cards. And so,
can you break that down a little bit for
yeah,
us?
so in the US, for example, you can, you can pay a credit card, you can buy stuff on a credit card, and then you don't have to necessarily pay your entire balance every month, which is something that you don't have in Israel. In Israel, you have sort of a delayed debit, which means everything that you swipe this month is going to come out of your account next month. But here we have this safety net of the overdraft loan. And people usually don't know how much they're even paying on the overdraft. And it can easily be 10 and even sometimes get to sort of 15%. And so I think that the spending habits aren't necessarily different. There are just different sort of mechanisms that people use here and there.
Wow.
1 in 2 is crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Can you give us a success story?
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is a girl called Shachal, who's very proud that we tell her story, who actually met one of our team members, Itai, and he convinced her to join. And at that point, she had 50 shekels in the bank, and it was the end of the month, and she would get every month to down to zero, and then paycheck would come in, and that was sort of how she was living. And just by connecting and understanding how much money she had to spend each month, she started immediately to leave some money aside by the end of each month. And after a few months, she realized that she could start Itai told her, you can start moving money to a savings account. So she started a direct debit to a savings account. And she started to build herself sort of a safety net. And then she decided she wanted to go back and finish her high school education, which she didn't finish. And so in order to do that, she would have to change jobs because her job was a daytime job, and she would need to sort of get a job in a restaurant or something that she could do while she was back at school. And so and when she made that move, she had to, she had a month where she didn't have a paycheck. And she was able to do that because she had built herself this safety net and cushion that allowed her to make a really big life decision and to sort of change sort of the course of at least the next few years for herself. And she did it without going into minus at all.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and now she's
really incredible. I feel like the last few months, though, I mean, the last year actually has probably been, I don't know, kind of depressing for you guys. Like on one hand, it's an opportunity. You get a lot of users, and a lot of people actually require the service that you're providing. But on the other hand, sometimes it feels like many of these people might be in a situation where there's, almost no help. I mean, they're getting very little unemployment. They're out of a job. So it's like, what kind of advice can you give to someone like that?
We've had, for sure, like we also are people, everyone that works at Riseup is there because they want to create, a change in the world. And so we take sort of every story like that, to heart. And we've we've built a process of sort of bringing in, of different kinds of support that, isn't sometimes a technological product, isn't the right solution, right? Sometimes managing your cash flow isn't going to help you if you don't have income at all. And we've connected to a bunch of different, financial consultants and different organizations that we're able to help sort of, to recommend to people as a way to get support that we can't provide.
I see. Sometimes does the advice reach like, listen, you're going to have to find a place, an alternate solution for living, or you're going to have to, like, is sometimes the best advice you can give just, listen, you're going to lose money and you need to find a way to lose as little as possible?
Yeah, I mean, we're very... part of the good thing about our services is very matter of fact. We're not, a lot of the sort of charities and financial consultants that work in the space come with a lot of, people leave feeling a lot of guilt about the way that they spend their money. And we try not to be in that emotional place at all. And sometimes when you're having a very objective financial conversation, it can be very tough. Usually someone, is making a phone call and is having a session with them and is, really getting in and trying to understand and trying to help. And if we're not the solution, then we definitely try and find a place that would be.
Okay. So most of the startup industry here in Israel is still like exit oriented, right? You say exit in English? How do you? Yeah. And so what do you have to say like to young entrepreneurs who think about what their next startup is going to be? And can you convince them why they should go more to the impact social startup route rather than just making money?
Well, I think that the biggest thing is because it's possible. We haven't finished our journey, and we talk about building a company for 30 years ahead. So, it might take a while before we become sort of the success story. But to build a fantastic world-class team, to raise money from the best investors in the world in large amounts, is something that is possible with a social mission. And I think that we're seeing more and more examples of that. And I think that as entrepreneurs see that, I believe entrepreneurs in general come to solve an issue. And they care about the issue that they're solving. And a lot of them end up doing other social things on the side because, they want to find other ways to give back. And I think sort of the combination of seeing that there is this, this new market of impact, that there are impact investors, that people are raising money, that employees want to work in a place that has a mission. We laugh at it sometimes, say it's such a millennial thing, and to want to have meaning in your life, in your work life, but it's something that we get huge numbers of inbounds of people that want to come and work with us because they connect to our mission. And so I believe that the way to get people into it is by showing that it's good for business, and it can help you to be even more successful and to get the investors you want around you and get the team that you want around you. Because at the end of the day, if it doesn't make business sense, and it's not going to work, the change won't be scalable in the way that we believe that it can be. And I think that in Israel, when I came 5 years ago, people were really skeptical. And I think that by now there's enough sort of examples and enough interest in this space that people believe that it's possible.
Very cool.
But some of the biggest companies out there, you think this is something that's still kind of at the first stages? Because the biggest companies out there, when you look at them like Amazon and Google, right, they're not necessarily with an explicit social statement.
Amazon is a social.
Yeah, really.
Not at all. In terms of the biggest companies in the world, we're not there yet. for most of them, there's corporate social responsibility, which means that we'll continue doing what we're doing, but we're also going to open some kind of fund or some kind of school. But I think that consumers are also becoming, Amazon's a great example. There's a lot of debate about whether it's, whether you should be supporting Amazon as a consumer or not. And I think that the more that those conversations happen, the more the companies that have a social mission will be successful. And I think the money sort of will, the flow of consumption will help those companies grow.
I see. But I mean, don't you think that sometimes I have an issue with the whole social responsibility framing, because I feel like companies like Amazon or like Google, they provide a service to people who need a service or want a service. And the line, I guess, is between the need and the want, and where do you draw the line, and what is need and what is want. But they provide a service. A lot of the times that service helps many people, and then you're right, then it gives them the opportunity to do this whole corporate social responsibility shtick and help out. But I wonder if creating, that cycle of the market creating a demand, people have something that they need, and providing that, filling that need is doing a service, is doing some kind of socially impactful thing.
I agree, and they're also creating jobs, which is great, and there are many positive things to these companies, and I think the question is are there negative side effects, and for many that there aren't really that negative. But there still are sort of, there's kind of do no harm, I think, is sort of the first step. And then in terms of sort of brands and the kind of new brands that I think will be very strong in the future, those are brands that have a mission because people are looking to connect to that. And I think that, when you're choosing between, for example, Amazon, there's no one that comes close to Amazon. So you're not choosing between, two apples. That's one is socially better. But I think that as time goes on, I hope that there will be more and more companies that come and give fight on both levels, that they have to be as good as as the top tech companies.
Yeah. I don't know. I buy my books on Book Depository. But I guess
buy my tech in B&H.
Yeah.
So
we don't use Amazon.
Yeah. So people abroad can use your service yet?
Not yet.
Okay. Is there you can sign up to get an update when it's available or something like that?
We should do that.
Yeah,
we also
right?
need to have a website that's in English. Somebody recently messaged us that they did a Google Translate of our website, and then my partner's name is Iftach Bar, and so it said open bar, because it's like the translation. So we will also soon start to think of other markets, and then obviously it won't only be in Hebrew, and within Israel we're starting to look at different languages too.
Very cool. So what can we plug then?
The website.
The website in Hebrew with Google Translate.
And
donate to Open Bar.
Found social impact startups.
Sorry? Come again?
To start social impact startups.
So that's the recommendation.
Yeah.
That's the.
But if people do want to learn more about, is there a way they can visit the website? Obviously not our English listeners, but what is the website?
Riseup.co.il. They can look me up on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
Always happy to.
Okay, so people can reach out to you.
Reach out to me.
Tamara Harel Cohen. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It was very inspiring, very cool. And hopefully we won't need your services. Right?
Everyone needs it.
Okay.
It doesn't matter
That's
what
a good question.
Is
there are there people who are in financially stable, even good financial situations that are
Absolutely, yeah. We have a whole spectrum in terms of our customer base, because everyone could use some help in terms of getting being more efficient, saving more money. The goals that they have might change, but it's not something that is it doesn't only work for people who are in debt.
So even Jeff Bezos can sign up. You shouldn't get that pizza tonight,
Chef.
Okay, so it's been great. Thank you for coming. Before we go, we have a sponsorship. We are sponsored by The Forward.
Yes, forward.com/2njb. You get an exclusive offer, 67% off, 6 months for $10.
Yes.
Forward.com/2njb.
Only if you can afford it, though.
Yes, that's true. So first check with Riseup, and then go to forward.com/2njb. Forward is a great source of news, opinion, all through a Jewish lens.
Yes. Also, Arutz Sheva, IsraelNationalNews.com. Check them out for great content in English about Israel. And finally,
AJN.timesofisrael.com, Australian Jewish news. Check them out, AJN.timesofisrael.com.
and we accept donations. Please help us out. Go to twinjb.com/donate and throw some money at our direction. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
And good luck with the initiative.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.